I spent a lot of time playing modded Minecraft back in the day. You know, the good old stuff. Early Tekkit, Old Feed the Beast, others. Anyway, I have a love for factory building and automation, and those packs just got it. But at the same time, with the need to constantly be moving and adjusting harvesting operations, and a near lack of proper renewability in a lot of cases, it became way too much of a time sink for 14-year-old me, and I kinda lost the heart for it. I needed a little bit more of a casual experience. And in adulthood, that specific need for a more casual type of game became more important. It's part of why I can never see myself playing Factorio. I'm certain it's a great game, but I don't think it would really be for me. But hey, maybe when I do eventually try it, I'll eat my words here. I was properly introduced to Satisfactory through a Let's Game It Out video, where Josh was using the Hypertube system to build player cannons. I thought it was absolutely hysterical, and I was sold instantly. Literally the next day, I bought the game and got started. Beyond what I saw in that video, I didn't really have many expectations, and I was blown away by this beautiful game. My very first impression upon loading up the game is how crisp, optimized, and professional looking this game is, especially for an early access game. Now, Coffee Stain isn't some tiny indie studio with 5 people in a basement, so you would think that's obvious, but honestly, with the state of the games industry, and specifically the Steam Early Access section, it is a breath of fresh air. I should note that my first impression of this game was like 2 or so years ago, and things have even since gotten so much better. Upon clicking New Game, you are greeted by 4 starting areas and a place where you can name your session. I'll get into the starting areas more in the gameplay section of the video, but for now I'll say that they are ordered in levels of risk and reward, where the further right you go, the more rich of a spawn it is, but it may also induce a more difficult start time. Once you've created a session and loaded the game, and after a little onboarding cutscene, you are deftly thrown into one of the best tutorials in gaming. It is hands-on, perfectly paced, and explains everything you need to know in just enough detail for you to understand the mechanics, but to still leave you interested in experimenting. And the tutorial can be skipped on future playthroughs by clicking this box in World Creation. The intro cinematic is relatively short and gets you into the action nearly right away with almost no fluff, just some good lore for who you are, where you are, and your purpose.
To destroy the environment of this new planet for the monetary gain of the company that owns you.
The progression at first is very linear and logical, allowing new players to easily pick up new mechanics and get used to them before adding new ones in. There are 2 main progression sections, the first being the hub, where you input items into milestone progressions to unlock new schematics for necessary components and machines, and the second being the space elevator, which unlocks new sets of milestone tiers through the input of large amounts of complex parts that Fixit are using for the mysterious Project Assembly. It is incredibly engaging for new players with something to always be working towards that is just out of reach, but attainable enough to not be threatening. It's simple and designed to take any element of confusion out of the equation. Also, to me, it had a very similar vibe, but a sort of opposite feel to the hit game Subnautica, which should always be taken as a good sign. This comes back to the idea of a more casual factory builder for me. A lot of the engagement and challenge in this game comes not necessarily from resource management, but mathematics, logistics, and efficiency. Pretty much every other factory game, or game modified to have factory elements, that I'm aware of, is realistic in the way that raw resources are inherently finite in a way. Satisfactory is different. Resource nodes that are used for large-scale mining are infinite. You could leave the highest level miner on a node for years of real time and it would not run out. I wouldn't be surprised if this is a turnoff for more hardcore players, but I much prefer this. Instead, different nodes have different purity levels that change the base output of the node. For example, an impure node of iron ore has a base output of 30 iron ore a minute, and a pure iron node has a base output of 120 iron ore a minute. This means instead of managing whether you will run out of materials, you have to figure out the most efficient way of using them. But that's just the thing, you don't actually have to do that. They're infinite. You can make it as efficient or inefficient as you want to, because that is what this game does best. But I'll speak more on that in a bit. I already touched on the progression system for the early game, but as the game goes on and opens up, the milestones and space elevator requirements become more complex and demanding, requiring the player to put their knowledge and factories together to start producing more complicated items at a much higher scale. And it feels very organic. Some crafting recipes might raise an eyebrow from time to time. I'm looking at you, portable miner, there is no way you do not need screws. But I digress. As I said earlier, Satisfactory has a way of introducing a mechanic, teaching it well, and once you have a decent grasp on the idea, it gets just a tiny bit more complicated, but on an exponential scale. You begin with small one input, one output machines, making simple products like iron plates and rods. And you end the game with factories full of multiple in-out machines just to make one type of item. It honestly can get a bit overwhelming as you make the transition from mid to late game if you're not careful, but that feeling goes away pretty quickly. Also, the early game can be a bit of a slog until you get to coal power, as you need to be constantly harvesting plant matter for your biomass burners, which cannot be automated. Coal power is early on, in Tier 3, and automatable. In terms of amazing gaming moments, turning on your first coal power plant and suddenly not needing to collect biomass anymore is definitely up there, and that's where they get you. The progression and build up to a success of a milestone truly is satisfactory. But it isn't just about making the most efficient smelteries and factories. You gotta get out there and explore. Satisfactory's world is comprised of one gargantuan handcrafted map. I mentioned the starting areas earlier, and those are not different maps. They are all part of the same map, just in vastly different biomes and very, very far away. And no picture or interactive map will truly do the sheer scale and beauty of this map justice. You just have to play the game and see it for yourself. The world is split up into a few different major areas that consist of different biomes, with each one having its own unique look of flora, though the fauna is pretty much the same throughout the map. And I mean, there isn't much of a difference in the flora either, besides looks. Regardless of what it looks like, you'll get wooden leaves from cutting it down, but that's all it really needs to be. And to get around this gorgeous world, you get to play with some of the best first-person movement mechanics I've seen in a game. It is very fluid and extremely reminiscent of Titanfall, but without the double jumps and wall running. You have an obscene amount of control while in the air. I can use a slide mechanic to give slight boosts if you time your jumps right, but it doesn't end there. As you progress, you unlock various equipment to make exploration easier and more entertaining. There's a craftable speed boot upgrade, some jetpacks, and offensive weapons like bashing sticks, steel rod launchers, up to proper automatic rifles and even explosives. Of course, this is still a factory building game, so you'll be spending pretty much most of your time building factories. Who would have thought, right? Thankfully, just as much thought has gone into the build mechanics as the rest of this lovely game. Unlike some other games I've played that attempted this style of first-person building system, Satisfactory is super polished and robust while keeping it simple enough to quickly use. A lot of positioning is done automatically by the game to accommodate for terrain and space. When it comes to building things like walls or foundations, there's almost no restriction to where they can be placed, meaning they can clip into the terrain or be built free-floating to give the player as much space as needed. When building factory objects on foundations, there's a grid snapping system that can be used for very clean and organized designs to allow for maximum efficiency and great-looking factory floors. There is also a simpler input-output snap option when not building on foundations for quick belting solutions. You also don't lose any materials when you deconstruct anything you've built, meaning if you happen to misclick or you just want to completely rebuild a factory, you don't have to worry about any losses. Beyond that, most of the materials used for any aesthetic construction are early game items, so you will have an abundance of ingredients for amazing factories. The early game presides in the idea that limitation fosters creativity. You have very simple machines and basic building blocks that slowly grow in complexity and variety over time. Simple one-way conveyor belts, simple input machines, and basic foundations and walls. But as you progress, you begin to unlock a practical universe of logistic controllers, recipes, and construction items. By even early mid-game, the only real limit is your imagination. This is also seen in the map layout. As I've already said, the map is huge, and with a little ingenuity, you can go almost anywhere right away. Some areas are blocked off with breakable objects that you can't destroy right away, but you will unlock the ability to do so. Some areas are guarded by dangerous fauna, but again, if you think outside the box, you can get past them even with early game weapons. At Milestone Tier 2, you can unlock the Awesome Sink and Awesome Shop, which is used to collect excess materials to give you coupons to spend. These coupons can be spent on building materials, ammunition, and most importantly, new construction options. With various wall and floor materials, pillars, ramps, roofs, and other decorative items, the possibilities become truly endless, and the recent updates have lowered the restrictions on what can be placed where, so with a little creative thinking, some true works of art can be created. There's also the MAM, or Molecular Analysis Machine, which has a few optional tech trees to boost your productivity and add some neat new items, as well as a hard drive analyzer. Hard drives can be found throughout the world, and once analyzed, give you options for alternate recipes of your factory materials. Some are more useful than others, but these can seriously streamline your factory lines, so they are always worth grabbing. And there's no hard limit on how much you can build, besides Unreal Engine's weird actor limit. and your own FPS. Coffee Stain believes that if you want to bring your computer to a halt playing this game, you can. And they're okay with that because it is really hard to get to that point. As of now, besides the intro sequence and general lore, there's not much of a story. However, there will be one. Coffee Stain is waiting to implement the story elements until the full 1.0 release, so as to not end up with disjointed story spoilers as development continues. The story will somehow incorporate current work-in-progress items such as the Summer Sloop, Mercer Sphere, and Strange Alien Metal. It is unclear how these will be used, but the devs have stated that the story will be considered kind of a background idea to the actual factory building. All we really know is the player is a pioneer of the Fix-It Corporation, which is a relatively generic manufacturing company as I understand it. You've been dropped on an exoplanet to mine for resources to contribute to the project assembly, and that's pretty much it for now. I am really excited to see what exactly the story and lore comes to in 1.0, and that honestly seems like it's coming close very fast. The entirety of the sound design in this game is pure gold. Every factory piece, weapon, animal, and even UI button has extremely polished sounds that feel reactive and alive. Just sitting in the middle of a bustling factory, listening to the general hum mixed with clashing and zapping and sounds of manufacturing is amazing. If you've seen my other review videos, you know I will always love and appreciate a well-made soundtrack. And this game is no exception. It's calming yet upbeat and energizing, perfect for top-tier productivity. And it's still in the works too. New music tracks get added all the time with game updates, and as far as I know, with 1.0, Coffee Stain intends on releasing the soundtrack as a standalone, just like many other games. But unlike other games, Satisfactory allows you to change the individual volume for every building and tool, giving the player full freedom to perfectly curate their sound experience, which to me is just next level. I think it's worth it to say that as of making this video, Satisfactory is at the number 2 slot of my most playtime on Steam, just behind Stellaris. I've said before, I'm a creature of habit, and if I find a game I really like, I will play it to death. This is one of those games, and I'm not alone. Also, it's only $30 and frequently goes on sale, but it's well worth the full price in my opinion. Unlike other early access Steam games, there is a definite roadmap in Coffee Stain, and it sure seems like we are rapidly nearing the 1.0 release. Honestly, it's felt like a full game since about update 4, and has only become better and better with each update. When Satisfactory does come out on full release, I do intend on streaming the game beginning to finish in a long series, so if you're interested, keep an eye out. And if you've made it this far, thank you for listening to me ramble on about this amazing game. If you enjoyed, maybe hit that like button, but honestly, I appreciate you just for watching. I hope you have a wonderful day, and I'll see you next time.